It's best to that you. Yeah. Easy. Yeah. Yeah. How to beat now? Hey. You got your space, I got me space now. Hey. Shine your shine, make I shine me shine now. Oh. I'm not a bad guy. Oh. I know be bad guy. Hey. But you try getting too much space, I gon' show you say I glitch. Respect to you. Our great legends, we pave the way where we know the crib, yeah, we thanking you. Now please lead the way if you can make you no block anyone's way. I'm respecting you. If you don't like my style, respect my hustle, my hard work, cause Charlie man, we working hard.
Welcome to the African Dream, your favorite human interest chat show. My name is Oral Ofori, and today I have the honor of having for our special guest, Bradley Opere. Bradley is a Kenyan, and he's at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill.
I'm Luis Fernandez. We have a change at the top of UNC student government. The student body has a new president-elect. Bradley
Calvin Opere has won the race with 53.
Bradley Opere, a junior from Kenya, will serve as UNC student body president for the next school year. The Morehead Cain scholar won with 53% of the votes, beating candidates Wilson Sink and John Taylor. Voter turnout was the highest in 5 years, with nearly 7,000 people submitting ballots.
He recently won an amazing elections, and we're here to have him tell us about himself, why he's out here in the US, and that story behind the election victory. Welcome to the African Dream, Bradley.
I'm so excited and honored that you had me.
It's really a great honor for us to have you on our show, Bradley. Let's go back to the basics. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Kenya for most of my life before I decided to move to South Africa, where I went to the African Leadership Academy. And after that, I decided UNC would be a great school for me to go for. And so that's how I landed in America. And, you know, it's been an amazing journey, and we'll see what lies ahead.
Tell us, Bradley, when did you arrive in America?
So the first time I came to America was actually 4 years ago. And when I came to America then, I was a Bezos scholar, and I attended the Aspen Ideas Festival. Now what that means is the Bezos family usually has about 10 students who go to the Aspen Ideas Festival, which brings in, you know, all the great thinkers that the United States has to offer. And you get to discuss so many things about where they feel the country is heading. And so I got to come for that thanks to the Bezos family. And it was one of the most eye-opening experiences I had around America and around how they discuss national issues. And from then on, I knew I would want to come back and study, but I wasn't sure where I would go. And so a year later, I got offered a scholarship to the Morehead Cain Foundation to come to UNC. And from then on, I knew it was going to be a great journey. So, you know, it's also been a journey of trying to bounce past those hurdles and see how to conquer them. But so far, so good.
University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
What are you majoring in?
So at the moment, I'm a business administration major. I'll either end up focusing in entrepreneurship or in finance. I'm still deciding that. And also I will be adding on a second major on African American and African diaspora studies because I see a link between those two. And if I can graduate with those, my mother will be extremely happy. You know, education is one of those, it's very highly emphasized, especially in a lot of different African households. You know, it's the key to a lot of different opportunities. And, you know, just the chance to go to an American university is, you know, a privilege in itself that you can't just take for granted. I've often understood that without the economic freedom, you can't get any political or social freedom. And so I think business as a skill allows you to understand, you know, how the global economy works, how different decisions end up affecting different countries, and just getting that knowledge and that base for me is very, very central, because I would like to end up working in government in the future. And I think an understanding of economics is very key. And then African American and African diaspora studies brings in the social aspect, because most often than not, when we care so much about money, we forget about people. And that's an integral part. Money in itself doesn't really mean much to me. It's how it affects people that really, really means a lot to me. Business administration gives me the skills, and then African American and African diaspora study gives me the passion to do what I want to do with the skills.
We'll go back to having you tell us a little bit more about schooling and life in University of North Carolina. But let's once again take you back. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this right now and watching probably might recognize your Kenyan ancestry. And you might have some people out there who would surprisingly recognize this face and say, "Oh, that's the Bradley Opere." So, tell us, where did you go to school in Kenya? Just how did it all start for you out there? How did you grow up as a young Kenyan individual?
In my younger days, I went to Donholm Primary. It's just a school within the Eastland side of Nairobi, public school. And then I moved to a different school. It was called New Light, to finish my primary school. I finished there. I went to Sunshine Secondary School. And then once I was done with that, I got a couple of offers. I got a government scholarship to immediately start university. But I didn't think that was the right move for me, because I have different perspectives on how the education system is and how it should be shaped. And so I got a call from one of my friends who was like, this is the African Leadership Academy in South Africa. And, their vision is to, develop the next generation of future African leaders. And I had finished high school relatively young. They said it was a 2-year program. And, I went, told my parents I wanted to do it, and they were like, no. And then I came back, I was like, they've given me a scholarship, and they were like, sure. And so that's how I ended up going to South Africa. Honestly, I believed in a different dream. So I packed my bags and went to a new country for 2 years. And that's my primary school to my the end of my high school education. And great journey. I haven't regretted it.
If you don't mind me juggling your memory, do you remember where you were 8 years ago? I asked this question because Barack Obama became president of the United States of America.
I think Obama's election was definitely something that had an effect on me, especially if you consider, his Kenyan ancestry was something that was very much an emphasized part of his story. And, even up to today, when Obama just recently made his visit to Kenya, the whole country stands still. He has 90% approval ratings in Kenya. So he's definitely someone that's very, very popular within my country. I think what his victory did is it really did give me hope. When you look at someone who's from such humble beginnings, but who could dream that he could be the president of the free world, and he actually went out and did it despite all the struggles. Hillary was the front runner. By all accounts, Barack Obama should not have been where he was, and he should not have been dreaming that big, but he defied those odds. And it's that hope that he had that I think still resonates with me up to today. One of the main things I even think I'll do in my office is have a poster about him, just because of what he represents. And even going into the elections, everyone would always draw parallels, and they would be like, same initials to your names and everything. And I would be like, I just feel like his shoes are so big to fill. And he's one of those characters who, even once he finishes his term, I'll forever live up and look up to his legacy. Now, that doesn't mean he hasn't had his shortcomings as president. Those can always be debated, but that doesn't take away, from what he's represented to so many people all over the world, me included.
Let me delve a little bit more on Barack Obama before we move on. In 1990, if I recall correctly, Barack became the first Black person to be elected president of a Harvard Law Review. And this took a whole 104 years to eventually happen. And if you're aware of Harvard Law Review, it's quite a prestigious, institution. And Barack Obama had been studying law with Harvard University. And when we look at that beginning, he was doing a lot of community services prior to becoming the president of Harvard Law Review. And do you, as a student right now studying with the University of North Carolina, have any, extracurricular activity that you're very passionate about?
I think at the moment, most of my work was around just helping with diversity issues on our campus. I've always been around to try be a voice to different students on our campus whenever issues go wrong here and there. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm the prime voice. I think there's other student leaders who do a better job than me. I think I've always taken a back seat at listening, and then offered my opinion. And sometimes my peers do listen to me, which is a huge privilege that I have with them. And we've been able to do a lot of good work, some of which was the main reason most of them rallied around to help my election be a success. I think coming in, studying in the United States, having lived in South Africa, having lived in Kenya, just gives me such a unique perspective on what I can do for all the different communities that I have been around. And so I think there's still a lot more room for growth within that regard. And I'm still formulating my next steps around how to leverage all those different networks for the betterment of all the different people I'd like to serve. So we'll see. It's still a story that's being written.
We're happy to be able to tell that, little part of it, which is, right in its infantile stages. And we are really looking forward to watching you grow and becoming a major influence to not only the African society and the American diaspora, but also to hopefully people out, across the continent and to your home country of Kenya. Let's ask you this, Bradley. This election that you won, tell us a little bit about it. But before you do that, I did some research and I realized that every election in the past few years has always gone to a runoff. This dude from Kenya and just went in a single shot. How did you do that?
Very few people believed we even had a shot at this. I remember speaking to one of my best friends, who was my roommate at the time, and he was one of the people who believed in me, and he was just like, Bradley, if we're doing this, let's do it. I remember being in a room with only two of my friends in our first meeting and just wondering, if we were going to get through, if I was, dreaming more than I should, if I was out of my place, being in a foreign country, being a Black person in America, all those things were at the front of my mind. I was thinking about them. But it gets to that point where you realize that what you really want to do and what you love the most sometimes is also what you fear the most. And at the edge of what you love and what you really fear the most is where I think you should always be. And so with that attitude, we started. I think it boiled down less so to me and more so to having really good people surround us. If I went name by name, I can literally tell you each and every one of them and how much they make even more better and more capable leaders than I do. And I purposefully ensure that I surrounded myself with people like that because, not only did I learn from them about different election things, but I think I just grew into a better person by seeing how they manage and do things. And a huge part of our outright election victories is honestly down to that ability to bring people in to one vision and one team who are honestly better than me. And up to today, and probably for most of my life, I'm extremely indebted to all of them for, not just their great work, because I think everyone brought more than just their energy. They brought a lot of heart into what we did. We went viral on different social media accounts so much that up to today I'm so humbled. Because when you look at a lot of millennials and a lot of different people, they don't want to share political beliefs in public. But for us, it was the complete opposite. Everyone went out and put their faces out there to show their support, and so humble up to today.
Tell us, what is your African dream?
Um, I think, that's a big question. I think my African dream is a place where our politics is a more fair place, where young people who aspire to work in government can find that space and find that voice, where corruption doesn't shape the government spaces that we have in the continent, where freedom of expression is something that's held, and freedom of speech. People can feel free to come in and speak what they want, where journalists, like you, can feel free to go in and air their views and keep governments more accountable. Um, my dream is of that Africa, where when people look to our continent, they see good leadership and not an example of what leadership should not be. Um, and part of what we are trying to do with this is to show every single person out there that it doesn't really matter where you come from or how you look like. Africans are not just the story of, that person who you go out and give aid to, provided we have just an equal opportunity with everyone else, we can rise and we can lead, just like how everyone everywhere in different countries can. And that's my dream. My dream is that it's not just me who will shape the story out of the continent, but more youth who are still in the continent doing a lot of great work and keep writing that story, so that as future generations come by, they'll see good leadership as a norm in the continent rather than the rarity that it is. And I think that story is already being written, and that emergence is already coming out in a lot of different outlets, and I'm observing it from the diaspora, hoping to also go back home and help write that story as well.
You just heard Bradley Opere from Kenya tell you what the African dream is for him personally. Thanks for sharing that with us. There's been a lot of young, people in Africa, millennials, who are coming out there and are, looking at positive ways in which they can project the image of the African continent, looking at ways in which they can make the new Africa more appealing in ways which you have defined yourself earlier on. And they're using all means available to them to make this dream a reality. And when you sit out here in one of the most developed countries on earth, which is also one of the most powerful, look at the opportunity it affords you through education, all the other means. What are some of the things that you feel you could do, even from out here in the diaspora, to positively, affect lives back home in Africa?
I think the immediate thing I would say is I'm definitely looking to see if UNC can have more partnerships with a couple of different universities in Kenya. And so, we'll put out our contact information out there so that different people can feel free to contact us. We have our official Facebook page that's out there with my name. Anyone can feel free to go in and post. We're always looking to develop more partnerships and use the resources that UNC has, to be able to better other growing universities around the continent and just share that knowledge. Because I think that's a tangible first step that my role can allow me to do within this year. Part of the process is still learning. I may be limited in terms of what I can do now, but to other students who study abroad, it's also a time to learn. It's a time to, I took my flight out to Boston across Friday to Sunday. And it was just remarkable for me to walk around the city, see how the parks are, see how families are, see how the infrastructure is developed, from the public library to all the different things. And I think just staying with that impression in your mind allows you to see just how far we can take our continent. And I think more than anything, my visit and my stay in America allows me to see the future that we can have, both in terms of things we can do and things we shouldn't do, because, America is not a perfect country in itself. It still has its own ways and places that it can grow. But there's also a lot to learn from the positives that the country has achieved, and I think the impression just stays with me. And I keep writing, I keep looking, just looking at how the systems work in an election year is just an amazing learning process in itself. And so slowly by slowly, the impression is left. within my mind, and I think within a lot of other different people's minds that I speak to as well. And I do definitely think that the upcoming generation in Africa will do a lot of good work to, putting the continent on an even better stage than it has been right now.
There is hope for Africa, and we're living testimonies of this hope. And hearing people like Bradley Opere, speak the way he does and tell his story, only gives more brightness to the future. So if you're from Africa and you're watching and you're listening, get your sunglasses on, because the future for Africa is going to be so bright. Bradley, we are aware of the fact that you have a project that is called Savannah, Kenya, if I'm saying it right. Tell us a little bit about that project before we leave you.
It was one of the first businesses that we tried out, and I think we'll be trying to shut it down across the next year, quite sadly. Savannah was an online grocery delivery business that we've been working on for the last 2 years. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is, youth entrepreneurship. And so across the last 2 years, what we tried to do is build an online platform where people could be able to come in and get their groceries to their doorsteps. And we pivoted a lot, and we ended up working with it as a business-to-business model. We ended up supplying one of the branches to one of the leading banks in Kenya, worked with a couple of schools, worked with a couple of churches within the area. But after 2 years and just going through the stress of it all and trying to juggle and balance, living in America with trying to operate a business at home, it finally got to that stage where we realized that our business couldn't grow as fast as we wanted if we weren't on the ground with all its founders in different countries. And that, I think, was an important step for us to learn, because it probably is one of the most painful things that I've ever had to do. But in terms of failing forward, it's one of the most positive experiences that I think I've ever had, because I can speak to the e-commerce market specifically in Nairobi at a very in-depth way than I could before. And the research we did, I'm not sure how it helps us at the moment, but I think down the line, the experience in terms of just leading an organization, hiring people, and having, mouths to feed and families for them to feed based off of you and the company that you run, was, such a daunting experience. I spent my sophomore year, waking up at 4, doing different Skype calls, because so much stakes were on the line. But we'll be venturing into something new very soon, still weighing the landscape and deciding what we'll be going into next. But, keep your ears on the ground.
Tell us exactly a little bit about the election you won, the position that you hold from that election, briefly, and then what do you want to achieve through that position?
So we won the student body president elections in North Carolina. I think for the first time in the last 6 years, we won without a runoff. It was the first time I think UNC has had an African student body president within the last 200 years, I believe. We're still looking through the details to confirm that that's true. But what we'd like to achieve going forward is our platform was based on community. We'll be looking to use social media outlets more creatively to engage with millennials who, recent data is showing are not that interested in politics as much as the older generation. And we're trying to see social media as a way to unlock how to make them more politically active. Secondly, we'll be looking to ensure cooperation and inclusion is, a big pillar. Racial diversity and different issues have been a national issue within the country right now. And so we'll be looking to do some work with the Racial Equity Institute in North Carolina to be able to offer different diversity training programs on campus, which I'm extremely excited about. And then lastly, we'll be working around, promoting safety and well-being, and we're trying to see if we can have some partnerships with Uber on safe driving on campus. And I'm extremely excited about that as well.
This is Oral Ofori of The African Dream, your favorite human interest chat show. Today we had the pleasure, honor, and opportunity of interviewing and getting to know Bradley Opere a little bit more better. He's originally from Kenya in East Africa, and like you heard him say, he won the presidency of the student body of the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and it's the first time an African has, risen to such a position in almost 200 years, according to the history of the school. Not very sure, but it's pretty quite close to that amount of time of waiting for this to finally happen, and it's actually happened. And it's not so much from the African Dream's perspective, from this show's perspective. We don't see it so much as only a victory for Africa, but we see it as a victory for diversity, where people can come all over, different parts of the world to America and still have the opportunity to live their own personal dreams. And we are very proud of your achievement, and we look forward to seeing you go further and further and climbing higher and higher. And who knows, you have a story that draws parallel with US President Barack Obama, so you never know. I'm not saying, I'm just saying you never know. All right, Bradley, before we leave you, what do you have to say to anyone watching you out there right now, whether they are from Africa or from any part of the world, to motivate them, to make them believe in their own dreams and, not be afraid to dream big?
I would just say that, I think everyone has that nudging feeling in their heart on what they're meant to do. And sometimes we want to walk away from it. Sometimes it seems too difficult. Sometimes you look at the situations around you and you discount yourself. But I think our greatest fear is not that, we're inadequate. It's that we are more powerful beyond measure, beyond what we think we can do. And I think that's certainly true. But your greatest fear shouldn't be that you can't achieve it, because in actual sense, you can actually go out and do way much more than you think you can. So just take that first step, believe in yourself, surround yourself with a lot of people who also believe in you as well, because that's an important step in the process. But ultimately, the future is going to be shaped by all the different people who believe they can. After all, the phrase is always, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I would broaden it and say, don't ask what the world can do for you, because, I'm someone who has grown up in so many different countries. And so I would say, go out, pursue your dream, don't discount yourself, and, you'll be surprised where you can go. And that's exactly how I feel right now. I'm very surprised, but you take the moment and you move with it. And you hope that by the time you finish, you open more doors for other people to be able to do even bigger things than you have.
If you want to get in touch with Bradley, you can see his address scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Just reach out to him via these addresses that you're seeing there on the screen. And I'm sure he'll be glad to get back in touch with you. Bradley, let's leave with some Kenyan music.
The jam that I will leave with is, there's a song by Nameless. It's called Coming Home.
Narudi nyumbani. Been around the world, seen a lot of things, I'll see you. I'm writing this letter to my daughter. I wanted to tell her I'm coming home. I'm writing this letter to my daughter. I wanted to tell her I'm coming home. But now I'm on a mission to represent my nation. But now I'm on a mission to get that victory. So switch on the TV and hope that you see me getting that victory that will make you proud of me. I went out on this mission to represent my nation. I went out on this mission to get that victory. So switch on the TV and hope that you see me getting that victory that will make you proud of me. I'm coming home, home where I belong. Whoa, I'm coming home, home where I belong. your home. So when you